After a worldwide zombie outbreak, the survivors developed a cure. 75% of cases were successfully healed, but those people still remember everything they did while infected. Now, the remaining 25% of zombies, who are resistant to the cure, urgently need to be dealt with. The third and final wave of cured individuals is about to reintegrate into society, and Senan is one of them. The bloodstains left on his eyeballs are undeniable proof that he was a zombie for 4 years. Now, as he is about to leave the rehabilitation center, he feels utterly lost about the outside world, and Connor feels the same way. Their past memories weigh on them like a heavy mountain. All those who have been cured must carry the shackles of their guilt as they move forward. Even as they re-enter society, they are reassigned jobs as if they were criminals. Television news reports. Carrying knives, skipping work, and any antisocial behavior are strictly prohibited. In the first 2 waves of cured individuals, there have already been numerous cases of suicide. Fortunately, his sister-in-law Abby volunteered to take him in, but not everyone is as kind-hearted as she is. With this group of former zombies who once brutally killed their own friends and family, the public is full of criticism and opposition, and there are even large numbers of radical activists. Gathered outside the quarantine zone, protesters marched and demonstrated, while Senan and the others could only silently endure the wave after wave of insults directed at them. They each moved separate. Connor held out, and Senan was told never to mention anything that happened in the past to Abby. In the world as it is now, all they can do is stick together for warmth. After finishing a day of interviews, Abby waited at home for Senan, whom she hadn't seen in a long time. The house was just as it had been 4 years ago, but it had forever lost its male head. After much hesitation, Abby still asked about the circumstances of her husband's death. Senan only said that the two of them had already parted ways by then. Her young nephew showed no resistance at all toward this unfamiliar uncle. While feeling the warmth of the present moment, she couldn't help but recall everything that had happened in the past. She and her brother had rushed home when the zombie outbreak began, but found no trace of his wife and child. A zombie attacked them when they were off guard, and Senan was tragically killed, leaving only her brother to hide in the bedroom. The memory of bloody hands pounding on the door also foreshadowed the inevitable end. Connor wasn't as lucky as Senan. He fought desperately outside his home all night, only to be met by his furious father. He begged his father to use his position to help him get back into the courthouse. If his mother was still alive, she wouldn't want to see him working as a damn janitor either. But his father flew into a rage. He had witnessed his beloved wife die at Connor's hands and had long since resolved to cut all ties with this son. With very different feelings, the two of them faced their first day of work. Senan returned to the research center and resumed his job as a laborer. But what he had to move was clearly not ordinary cargo. He had thought the seemingly calm zombies before him had been cured, but upon seeing the doctor, Lucy, they suddenly became frenzied and violent again. It turned out that there were still traces of the virus remaining in Senan's body, so the zombies regarded him as one of their own. Even if he laid hands on them, they would not retaliate. Studying this zombie with drug resistance has become Lucy's biggest challenge. The homeless Connor finally waited for Senan at the Healers Club, and it turned out he was right to keep the truth from Abby, because once everyone found out, their attitudes completely changed. Senan also shared his experiences at the research facility, saying that at that time, the zombies actually treated people like them even better than humans did. The Defense Force officers came to hold them accountable. Connor skipped work without reason on his very first day, and all he got in return was a brutal beating. Once, you held a position of honor, but the world no longer belongs to you. Senan woke up from a nightmare, only to be greeted by paint splashed across his door. Abby, who was dragged into this mess, not only didn't blame him, but even tried to comfort Senan, aware that this only deepened his guilt. The government decided to take a humanitarian approach, and it would take less than a week to eliminate the remaining resistant group soon. There would be no more zombies in the world. Lucy was filled with anxiety. Connor waited outside Senan's house and caught Abby as she was heading out, immediately stepping forward to offer a friendly greeting. It truly wasn't easy for a widow and her child to get by, unlike before when she had been a lawyer running for office. Now he has become a low-level cleaner. As for the time when he was a zombie, he only felt that his consciousness was trapped in the cage of his body. He struggled desperately to stop it, but was powerless, and could only watch everything happen. Fortunately, everything is over. He was extremely grateful for your acknowledgement and for taking care of Sainan. Completely unaware of everything, Sainan was busy assisting Lucy with her research, but so far, there had been no progress at all. During study time, he discovered a surprise his nephew had left outside his lunchbox. In addition, there were 2 soldiers acting suspiciously. He had followed them all the way to the underground prison, only to witness these 2 bullying the zombies. He immediately stepped forward to stop them, but unexpectedly, he managed to break free at that moment and chased after one of the soldiers relentlessly, only to be shot dead by the soldier at the last second. Looking at his body, Sailan felt a fearless struggle within his heart. On the streets, the Parade of the Cured was massive and imposing. They demanded that the government pay attention to their rights, but were met only with ruthless suppression. Debates about the destruction of humanitarianism continued on television, while Connor explained to Sainan that it would never truly disappear once the infected are gone. The hatred will simply be redirected onto them. In fact, they had already recruited a group of the cured and were plotting an act of revenge. Shenlin had no intention of joining at first, but Connor assured her that no one would get hurt. Thinking back on everything she had experienced since being released, Sainan still raised the Molotov cocktail, turning all her grievances and anger into a blazing fire. But when she went to work the next day, she learned that the place they had attacked the previous night was actually the home of a volunteer from the Ministry of Defense. Several people were injured in the incident, and one person died. The Healers Alliance publicly claimed responsibility for the case, and one healer was arrested as the leader of a terrorist organization. This was all orchestrated by Connor, who made full use of his skills as a former public opinion candidate. An even greater conspiracy had already begun, but Sinan was trapped in endless remorse, unable to extricate himself. In the past, he had committed unspeakable atrocities against his older brother, and the one who incited him back then was none other than Connor, the very person who turned him into a zombie. Whether as a human or a zombie, his leadership and command abilities were beyond question. Lucy revealed the truth she had always held on to. The woman lying in the hospital bed was once her beloved. Together, they had developed the cure, but unexpectedly, she was attacked by zombies. Lucy had held on until now solely to save her. Now that Seynan had been cured, he had the right to choose to become whoever he wanted to be. As soon as Seynan returned home, he was confronted by Abby's questioning. He had no choice but to explain that he had nothing to do with the Resistance Alliance, and that the reason he left early and returned late every day was simply to keep this mother and son from being implicated by him. To comfort Abby, he took the two of them to the mountaintop that he and his brother had loved to climb since childhood. Looking down from above, the whole city was shrouded in gloom. Connor showed up uninvited late at night, and facing Seynan, who wanted to return to a normal life, he directly asked whether Abby would ever forgive the person who killed her husband. Abby was unable to answer and could only find an excuse to leave, but Seynan was already struggling to contain the anger burning inside him. Connor added fuel to the fire, saying, "You're not the pillar who can take care of them. In fact, you're the very reason they're in danger." Sooner or later, the truth will come out. Peaceful lives aren't so easily shattered. That day, Seynan volunteered to help deliver some papers. The relationship between the two had grown increasingly close through their time with Dory. Meanwhile, Abby received a routine visit from a military officer at home. He acknowledged Abby's courage in accepting her current situation, but the Connor behind him was far from simple. This time, he came precisely because he remembered that Abby had been secretly keeping an eye on the two of them. Recalling their terrifying expressions at the time, a still-shaken Abby decided to personally go to the Survivor Support Center to investigate and gather evidence. There, not only were there groups gathered for zombie meditation, but Connor was also passionately giving a speech. But while he was sincerely recording the video, he was caught on the spot by one of the survivors. Connor still wore that self-righteous look, but the clear-headed Abby wasn't buying it. He knew perfectly well that all Connor ever pursued was power, and the oppressed healed had naturally become weapons in his hands. However, Abby had no intention of getting involved, simply warned Connor to stay away from his two family members. After exchanging harsh words, Abby intended to leave, but unexpectedly, the reindeer had already been stopped. He had no choice but to run upstairs to evade his pursuers. He tried to escape through the window, but was firmly grabbed. Yet, after a fierce struggle, Abby ultimately managed to break free and escape with his life. Inside the research institute, Lucy suddenly noticed the experiment subject behaving strangely on the surveillance monitors. Filled with excitement, she went to find her lover, only to be met with a frenzied attack. In the midst of the crisis, two soldiers arrived, but shockingly, they intended to take the experiment subject away for euthanasia. Lucy pleaded with them desperately, but it was all in vain, leaving her in utter despair. Things were no better for Samara Home, who was attacked in the middle of the night by anti-cure activists who broke in. The police could only offer words of comfort. Incidents like this had almost become the norm. Left with no other choice, the three men decided to seek out Connor. He was right really would bring danger to Abby and her son. Connor seized the opportunity to persuade him, saying that if they wanted the opposition to hear their voices, they would have to accomplish something significant. Meanwhile, Abby discovered at home that her camera was missing its memory card. Clearly, someone else was behind last night's incident. Seynan, kept in the dark, had no idea about this and obediently followed Connor to help plan their next move, only to be surprised to find Lucy there as well. In order to save his loved one, he no longer cared about anything else. While Connor's plan was to keep control of an infected in their hands, as long as the zombies weren't wiped out, they would always have leverage. To achieve this, they would have to break into the underground prison of the Research Institute. Just as the three men were about to argue that this approach would cause casualties, the military suddenly arrived to launch a raid. It turned out this was because Abby had contacted the officer in time. Meanwhile, while he was at the park with his child, Connor came to confront him about this betrayal. Seeing that their conversation was going nowhere, Connor dropped a bombshell. He revealed his scar and told Abby, "Your husband really did his best before he died. As for the more detailed truth, why don't you ask Seynan, the one you're trying so hard to protect?" Even after being taken away by the military, Seynan still tried to keep Connor's secret. However, the officer persuaded him, saying he is actually the real culprit behind your infection. Now, the only ones who can offer protection to you and your family are the military. Seynan left in silence, but outside, a group of rebels was already waiting for him to deliver Connor's message about meeting up. Meanwhile, he had no idea that a storm was brewing at home. As soon as Abby saw him, she asked about the truth behind her husband's death. Unable to hide it any longer that night, Seynan had no choice but to tell her everything. Having learned everything, Abby finally exploded. All reason was thrown out the window as she screamed at Seynan, telling him to get out of the house. With nowhere to go, Seynan had no choice but to meet up with Connor as planned. Connor was full of confidence Abby's reaction was exactly what he had expected, and he told Seynan, "I am your real family." But Seynan asked a question that struck straight to the soul. "Do you have nightmares at night?" As soon as the words left his mouth, an officer appeared from behind, raising his gun. Connor could hardly believe that Seinan would betray him like this. Overcome with rage, he grabbed a broken wine bottle from the ground and viciously stabbed the officer. The blood-soaked corpse brought back memories of the pleasure he felt when he was a zombie. But he still managed to hold on to a final shred of reason, demanding to know why Seinan had done this. At this point, he finally understood the weakness that lay deep within Seinan's nature. But having come this far, there was no turning back for him. On an ordinary morning, the riot officially broke out. Disguised as orderlies, the rebels, led by Lucy, headed to the control room along with the prison guards. Lucy had originally only intended to free her lover, but at that moment the other party suddenly turned against her. The operating system opened all the prison doors, and Simon, who had just arrived for work, witnessed this scene firsthand. Surrounded by a horde of corpses, she was not attacked at all. Soldiers, who had come to inspect the situation, could only see the courtyard filled with wandering zombies. In shock, the car suddenly exploded, and the Research Institute's main gate was also damaged as a result. The entire horde of zombies was drawn outside by the commotion. The soldiers hurried to stop them, but faced with such overwhelming numbers, they were powerless. A large number of zombies escaped outdoors, while only Lucy's lover remained inside, trembling uncontrollably from beginning to end. Witnessing this scene, Lucy rushed over immediately. Without a doubt, her research had succeeded. Only a passionate kiss could express the longing she had felt during this time. But the relentless zombie attacks froze this moment in time forever. When Abby heard gunshots coming from afar, the outside world had already changed completely. He hurried home, grabbed an axe, and took down a zombie. The army had come to the rescue, but they refused to let him go look for his son. Shingdan ran all the way home, and upon seeing the scene, immediately rushed to the school. Amidst the fleeing crowd, he managed to find his nephew, but was then attacked by a zombie, leaving his nephew alone to evade two pursuing zombies. At that moment, Connor arrived and, with gunfire echoing all around, pinned him to the ground and held him down, beating him. Clearly, he was the one who cared for and protected Sainan the most, so why couldn't he understand his true feelings? His accusations were abruptly cut off by the sound of a gunshot. Seda didn't pay any attention to Connor, who was lying in a pool of blood, and instead took out both zombies before his nephew could be harmed. When he returned outside, Connor had already disappeared, and Abby, who had entered the quarantine zone, took advantage of the chaos to slip back outside. When he encountered the zombies that had followed him, he immediately picked up the fallen soldier's sidearm and took them out swiftly and efficiently, dispatching the mutated soldier as well. By the time he rushed home, it was already late at night. At that moment, Seinan also brought his son back, but the relentless zombies came charging at them once again. Although Seinan smashed them to death with all his might, he still couldn't change the fate of his nephew being attacked. Abby was in deep agony, trembling as he raised his pistol, but Seinan stopped him. He knew that Lucy and the others had recovered, and he assured Abby that he would save his infected nephew. After a night of chaos and turmoil, all the zombies were finally eliminated. This incident also prompted the government to pay more attention to the rights of those who had recovered. With the news that a cure for the non-responders virus strain had been successfully developed, Abby's hope was rekindled. He decided to stay at home, waiting for the return of his last two family members. The end.